Welcome back to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Shannon Griffin. And Shannon is the program manager of a nonprofit organization in Sacramento and the owner of For Humanities, a purpose-driven t-shirt company dedicated to empowerment and awareness. She is also the creator and co-author of the anthology, The Smell of Poverty, where she reflects on how growing up on public assistance shaped her resilience, compassion, and lifelong commitment to social change. With over 30 years of experience in social work and serving others, Shannon has worked extensively with socioeconomically impacted families, understanding firsthand how poverty and adversity influence the social, emotional development of children and communities. Guided by the belief that the next child should know someone cares, she strives to break cycles of marginalization and systemic inequity through strength-based, trauma-informed approaches. Shannon is a triple-negative breast cancer survivor, and her personal journey has deepened her mission to help others not only survive life's challenges, but thrive beyond them. Her work continues to inspire individuals to embrace their strengths, uplift their communities, and build pathways toward generational wealth and healing. So welcome to the show, Shannon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course, I'm so excited to have you on. There is so much to your story that I can't wait to dive into. But first, I want to say, so you have over 30 years of experience in social work, and just kind of tell us what the next week looks like for you.
Yes. So currently, right now, I am finishing up graduate school. So I'll be receiving my master's in social work. So this next week is a little, a little crazy, but it is very worth the wait. It's been a long time, a long 3 years, and just being able to serve and still working in the field and currently, just fine tuning my skills to be able to support the work people that I work with.
I love that. We need you. We need so many more of you. And just from what we talked about in the introduction, the areas that you specialize in are just such needed areas for people like you. So thank you for
Yes.
doing all that you do. All right, so we kind of always start talking about the cancer because
Mhm.
that's kind of what we're here for.
Right.
So take us back to when you were diagnosed, what was going on in your life, and just a little bit about, your diagnosis and what you went through during that time.
Yes. So again, thank you for having me. So in retrospect, looking back, 2015 is when that day for me, and actually, um, it was in November. So it was in November. So I know October is usually identified for breast cancer awareness, but for me, it's November. So November is when I discovered 2015 the cancer, the lump, and so part of, again, as you shared, that the t-shirt business, so I do graphics, and I was creating graphics, and it was cold here in the Central Valley during that time, and I was sitting at the desk getting ready to get started with my computer, and so I was like, it's really cold, and I'm like warming myself up, trying to get warm to get started. And as I was just rubbing my arms, and my thumb just grazed my left breast, and on the tip, and I was like, was that a lump? Did I feel something? And so I kind of sat, and I put my my right hand, as they would say, over my heart, but put it there, and I felt the lump. And immediately right then I kind of sat back in my chair and said, that's cancer.
Wow,
And
like you had this knowledge immediately.
exactly, which was crazy. And immediately when I touched it, and I said, wow, that's cancer. That's a lump, I feel. Pain just shot right through it. Immediately, I just felt this pain just shot right through that area.
It was like something
And
was telling
so,
you, yes, you're right.
yes, exactly. And at that moment, I was like, wow. But as the social worker kicked in, And so I just kind of sat there. I grabbed my cell phone and I called Kaiser, called my medical provider, and I got on the phone and started saying, hey, the advice nurse got on and she asked me, what's happening. And I told her what I found. And she said, again, she said, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I said, yeah, me too. I said, what's next? So, at that time, she said, well, okay, you need to make an appointment. So she's given me all the parameters of what it is I needed to do. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that because it was, again, around veterans. Here we are around the same time. So this week time frame is definitely reminiscent of when I discovered my cancer because I went in on that day because I work a lot. And as I shared, I worked in the Bay Area. So I was a good, almost 60 miles away, 2 hours. And because I'm so dedicated to working, I was like, okay, I need to be able to take off work. And so I said, okay, well, I'm not going to go on this day. I'm going to go on that day because we get the day off. So I said, okay, I'm going to go on the day off. So I went on Veterans Day and went in and had to get where they take a biopsy and they doing, ultrasound and they're checking and he have me laying and I'm looking on the camera and he shows it to me right there. And I
Wow, you
can
didn't even
see
have
it.
a mammogram. They went straight to the
No,
biopsy?
yeah, they went straight to that and
Okay.
showed it first on where's the ultrasound and was showing it to me. And then they said, well, would you like to do a biopsy? I've never done biopsy. So I was like, okay. Because I knew that if I had to come back, it was going to take me a few days because I was going
Get
to
it
be
all
working.
done while you're
Yes.
there.
Yes. I said, no, let's get all this done so that I am ready, prepared. I know exactly what we're doing. So they did the biopsy. They also shot a little metal thing inside to be able to go back and trace it. And then at that point, they said they would give me a call. And I said, all right. I got dressed and went on to work and went on to work. And so they were going to call me that day. So I didn't get a call. And I said, oh, well, I didn't get a call. So it must be something serious because they have to assess it and get it ready and prepare me. So that Friday came and I was at work and they called me at work. And, I was just in a meeting getting out. I saw the call and took the call. And the gentleman, the oncologist, was on the phone and he just, asked if it was me. And I said, yes. And he said, well, I just want to let you know you have cancer. And, I'm at work and I'm like, so I'm out there again, social worker kicked in. Okay, I'm trying to get the all the logistics. Okay, when do I need to come in? I want to get this done. What? And he said, well, someone will call you to have an appointment. And so at that point, I hung up. I gathered my staff and I let them know what was happening. And I said, well, this is what's happening. I'm going to be out. I need you guys to kind of take care of the department and make sure things are done. And they crying. And I said, no, it's going to be okay. And then, I went and shared it with my supervisor and they were like, what? You were at work. And I said, yeah, but it's good. It's going to be good. We're going to take care of it. I'm going to go and do my thing. And at that point, the day ended and then, I went home. I think one of the hardest parts of that day was that I had to call my mom.
Mm.
And when as a kid, you have to call your mom and tell her some bad news. I had to call my mom, and on my way coming home from work in that 2 hour drive, I was like, I have to call my mom and tell her I have cancer. And I'm the youngest, so I'm the baby.
Aw.
And it's like, I knew this was gonna, kind of tear up. And so as I shared it with her on my way coming home, she was like, oh, she went. I said, no, mom, it's okay. It's okay. This is going to be, a thing. We're going to go through this process and I'm going to be fine. And so
Did
that
you
was
ever have
one of the
like
things I remember the
did
most.
you ever get to the point where you just kind of, broke down and like the emotional piece hit you, or were you kind of in social worker mode through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I
Wow.
was in social work mode through the whole thing because I didn't tell my family. The day I found it, I didn't tell anybody. I just said, I'm going to call, make this call, get this appointment. And then I went to sleep, woke up the next day. So when I came home that Friday, when I told my mom, and then I shared it with my family and told them, and they just looking at me like, what? And my husband, he was like crying. And then my son is more so like me. So he just stood there and just looked in my face, looked in my eyes. And I just looked at him and I said, no, it's fine. And at that point, he was fine. And they just kind of, walked and moved on and was just kind of stoic a bit. Although my daughter, she was definitely emotional. She's the more the emotional one. So but yeah, I was in social work mode most of the time.
Okay.
I think I slowed down and said, okay, this is me when we went to go to see the oncologist to tell me about the treatment. And my husband was there with me and she was telling, you got to do this and, I have to do this and, that and all the treatments and radiation and everything. And at that point, when she said radiation and told me that I was going to lose my hair, that's probably was the most for me that I was going to lose my hair. And I was like, okay, yeah, chemo treatment. Okay, that's fine. Lumpectomy. Okay. But I'm going to lose my hair. So losing hair is definitely a big thing. It's a big thing.
I mean, it is for most women, absolutely.
Yes.
And men too, I guess.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It was a big
I
thing.
love well, I don't love it, but I did not have chemo, so I did not go through that. But it's losing your eyebrows, losing your
Right.
eyelashes. I
Yes.
interviewed a gentleman and he said that it was like wintertime and his nose was just running because he didn't have
Right.
any hairs
The
in his
hair.
nose to keep. And
Yes.
it's like those are the things, you think about the hair on your head, but not
Yeah.
like you lose all of your hair.
All of your hair.
Yeah.
Yes. That was probably the biggest thing. And at that point, I was probably really not zoned in, but I was hearing her. But I think I was just still focused more so on, the treatment, how many, and she's asking questions, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. So, my husband more so was doing a lot of the talking and listening, and I was just kind of just taking it in and processing. So it was more processing for me at that time.
I always tell people to take somebody with you to those
Hmm.
appointments because
Yeah.
you're just going to get inundated with so much
Yes.
information.
Yes.
So many of us are still kind of in a fog about, oh
Uh-huh.
my God, I have cancer, that you
Yes.
don't even hear anything that they say. And you need
Hmm.
somebody who can write things down or ask the questions that you need to answer, but you just
Yes.
can't think of them at the
Yes.
time. And so I'm glad that your husband was with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a good part. That I can say, looking back, that was a moment where I was probably in a fog and kind of like she's talking and asking and saying, and I'm kind of processing and thinking like, okay, what's next? What I do? What is that? What's this? How that's gonna look? And as of course, the provider for my family at the time, it was like, okay, how's this going to work? How's that? How I'm going to deal with work and who's going to do that? And so it was a lot of processing for me at the time.
Absolutely, I bet. And now, so you already had your t-shirt business before this,
Yes.
and you were working in, your experience in social work and stuff. So I guess what kind of changed, after you went through all of this as far as direction in your life, direction in your work? I mean, did it, or did you just kind of keep doing, everything that you were doing before? Because we talked before we got on that,
Yes.
you have all the free time in the world because you have, multiple businesses and charities and
Right.
kids and all of the things. But
Right. Yeah, it pretty much did because actually when I was doing chemo, I was doing like maintaining a Facebook page for a child care facility and creating graphics. So I would create the graphics, but I would have my head down on the table and I'm just moving the mouse, and doing it. So but it kept me moving. It kept me moving and tapped in. It kept me connected to the world and to, still output. as opposed to just input coming into me. So it kept me where I said, no, I got to do this. And just my personality period is just really just get it done. And so it kept me there and not to the point where I was like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and just die, or just sit here and not do anything. But um, as far as my focus, it didn't change as far as the social work part. So I focused the energy into helping others get through it. And so I was live and broadcasted it from day one and let people share and know what it is I was going through and that I was diagnosed. And I walked people through it. This is what I'm doing now. Oh, today I went to the doctor and they told me I'm going to have to do, 29 sessions of radiation, and all of that. And this is what this means. And I have to go and get the little tattoo markings, don't have no tattoos at all. So that was terrible. That dot was the worst thing ever. I
The
was like,
dots you'll never see unless you're
how
under a
do
black
people
light,
do
but
this, and do all of this stuff? And I get two dots, and I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. So, still have the little markers, but it was just more so that and just letting people know. And at that point, it did open a new door. It opened up a new door where people would reach out to me if they were diagnosed, or they would reach out to me if they hadn't had a mammogram, and they would talk with me about it, and I would walk them through the process and things what they need to do. And I did become that voice for people to be able to relate to, because they see me so much. They saw another part of me being very transparent about it, so it helped a lot of people.
and I talk about that with people a lot. It's this club that we never wanted to join,
Right.
right? And there's just something about when somebody else has been diagnosed, it just kind of opens up this. All of a sudden, people want to talk to you, and people can feel like they can share with you. When if you haven't been diagnosed, people tend to be a little less likely to share what's going on in their lives with you.
Yeah, that is very true. Because I mean, it's just the same as anything. We can relate. They can relate to you, and they know you understand what those thoughts that are going on in their head. They know when they say, I'm in a fog. They know, hey, when you're going through treatment, that's, as they say, chemo brain, as they would call it, and they know that, oh, I forgot something that I always remembered. I can say a little funny that was for me is, of course, because I had never applied for, EDD or, unemployment because disability. So I did it, for that time because I was off work, and I forgot my password like 10 times in 1 week. So you get the little slips from EDD in the mail that say you change your password. I would get like 2 and 3 of them a day because I forget. And I was like, no, I was good with my memory, but during that time, my memory would escape me. And I call it now. And then sometimes again, we still kind of go through these little fog moments. And I say that it's sort of like perfume. You just got to go hang out in the room. Don't try to stress yourself out about trying to remember what you were trying to remember. Just hang out in the room. So if you were talking about dogs, just go hang out in the dog room. That particular dog is going to come to your mind eventually. So don't stress yourself out. Go hang out in the dog room and you'll get it. So that's kind of how I had to do it. I was like, I'm just going to hang out in this room real quick. And I know it was something about this. And so I would just mentally hang out in the room and then, beat myself up about it because I knew what was happening, because I would know. I was like, wow, my memory really done went somewhere. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to stress. I'm just going to hang out in the room, just sit here and wait till it falls on me like a, spray scent. And it would. So I
I
was
love
like,
that.
okay,
Never thought of writing it down. Just it'll come
no.
back to me eventually.
No, you don't write stuff down like that. That's your password. You, you're supposed
You
to
might steal it if
remember.
you write it down.
Right? Then I started writing it down. After getting those things, I was like, oh, I think I probably better write this down, huh? Because this is not working.
And that's such a big thing is looking at it lightly and finding the humor
Yeah.
in it, because cancer sucks, and I say that almost every show. Like, cancer sucks, there's no two
Yeah.
ways about that, and you can let it suck and live in the suck and let the suck drag you
Right.
down, or
Hmm.
you can find the humor, you can find the joy, you can find the little things, to kind of help pull you out of it, so you're
Yes.
not living in it forever.
Right.
And
Right.
I
Very true.
love that you found humor. I just found work. Like, I'm just going to keep moving forward and
Right.
not think about what's going on here. But I love when people find humor in it, because that just makes it all so much better and easier
Right.
to deal with.
It does.
All right, so I want to shift gears a little bit, because it's kind of all over your bio, your work in with public assistance and
Hmm.
working with socioeconomic challenges and things like that. And you co-authored a book, The Smell of Poverty. So can you share a little bit about that? And it sounds like you grew up in public assistance, so
Hmm.
that's really been a passion of yours. But how did you really get started, like, working with those kind of people, and talk about your book a little bit?
Yeah. So as I stated then too, it's like, yes, I was definitely brought up in poverty where we didn't have a lot. My mom was a single mother of six, and I was the youngest of six, so we were on public assistance. My mom couldn't work because she had a disability, so we didn't have that. And so it was, this is where we are, this is how we're doing it. So growing up in that, really become resilient and understanding, and you minimize, you don't have this exact, elaborate things and stuff. So the smell of poverty was during the time I was, kind of going through my treatment. It was kind of after the fact. But it would came from definitely talking about it, because I did a lot of broadcasting, was on Facebook a lot and doing a lot of things. Periscope was going on around that time, and I would always talk about social things. It was dealing with social things with the t-shirt business. And I was talking one day because I was during a time where I was looking for funding for the nonprofit that I have called Survive and Thrive Cancer Recovery. And it was, after my time with cancer and, battling it myself. And so I was on live talking about how I wrote my appeal letter. And so I shared in the letter to funders that, growing up in poverty as a social worker, continuing to provide services for people and supporting people, my cancer journey added to my tool, chest of things that I could also talk about and share from that perspective. And then definitely from a perspective of where maybe you don't have medical insurance, or you don't have all the fancier things, or your insurance is not as great. So the smell of poverty, I was talking about it, and I had mentioned about poverty. And as the conversation went on, I more so reflected on when I was at my job as doing the social service and supporting services for families, for low income families. And it was CalWorks here in, California. And I talked about poverty, and I said, well, if you think about poverty, I said, I have lots of clients that have come in, and I can see that their children, their families are in poverty, and they may not have the resources to go into the doctor to get diagnosed, or to know if they're sick or ill, or if they're children. And I happened to mention that, I was reflecting, I was like, poverty has a smell, and you can smell it. And I said, I found it really interesting that it didn't matter who the family was. They were not related. They were different people. And when they came into the office, they had a smell that smelled the same. And I was, looking at that, thinking about it. And I was like, these people are not in the same homes. They don't know each other, and they're coming at different days, but there's a certain smell that is smelling of, carpets may not be very well clean. There may be non-washed clothes, wet clothes, and these things, not being able to wash the clothes cleanly with good soaps and detergents. And I would smell, and you can smell it on the children, because children are on the floor. And so whenever I would hold the babies or hold and see the children, the smell was the same. And when I was doing the broadcast, I said, there is a smell to poverty, and people would chime in. And they said, yes, I've smelled it before. So thus the reason the book became The Smell of Poverty. And what do you do? How do you do it? Is it the same? Do you smell it? So that is where that came from.
Wow. That's, and for people who have never experienced that, it's truly eye-opening. And I feel like, I saved, like, my daughter, when she graduated high school, she didn't want to go to college right away, and she went and spent a semester in India. And she came back with just this newfound awareness of what it's like to not have, and experience that. And I think that everybody should go and experience time in an underprivileged area to just really understand what it's like. And maybe we would have a little less entitlement in this, in this society right now. So thank you for kind of sharing that, because I know there's a lot of people out there who have never experienced anyone like that, who have
Yes,
never been in that state. And it's really important, because there are, just as we're going through right now, like, there's 42 million people
right,
on SNAP benefits right now. And that's 18% of our entire population. Like, what is going on that is necessary,
right. Now that's very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And tell us about your, your Survive and Thrive nonprofit, because I love what you're doing with this.
Yes. So, as I shared, Survive and Thrive came from the fact of a friend of mine prior to me being diagnosed. A friend of mine, she was diagnosed with colon cancer, and then I was supporting her. So I said, "Oh, let me do a t-shirt business and do some t-shirts to raise money for her." Then as she battled cancer through her 6 years, she ended up having liver cancer, so it spread. So we together, she was supporting me, and I'm there for her, and she would come and walk me through, like, okay, chemo and this was going to happen. So I said, wouldn't it be good, social worker kicked in, we can like take this and support others that don't know and need someone to be there with them, and bring food, or bring different things, and wouldn't that be great? And so we came up, with Survive and Thrive. And so it was like, survive and then thrive. Not only survive, cancer, but thrive after cancer, thrive during cancer, thrive after treatment, and all of these things. So we came in, I'm developing and, creating. And so she was able to be there on our first Survive and Thrive. We did it in Stockton, and but the next following one, she passed away. So she wasn't there to be with me for the second one, but she was there on the first. I got her recorded, and she's talking and sharing. But you could see during that time she was really struggling a bit, and we just knew that hey, we're gonna wait this out. But Survive and Thrive was definitely close to our heart, to be able to support other cancer survivors with education, food, and having a safe space to go and share and talk about your treatment, and what things are going on and how we can support them. But it developed also into the point of when I was first diagnosed, and I knew what I needed to do. They told me I had to pay a $5,000 copayment. So it was like, people don't have $5,000 to just say, here you go, save my life now. So it morphed and turned into that, also being able to support cancer survivors with their copayments. So they didn't have to worry about, do I eat or do I live, in my home or wherever I'm living, or, do I do this? Which one? And do I have the money? Do I have to go do a GoFundMe? Those types of things. And we wanted to not have, cancer survivors to have to worry about that they have to worry about a copayment. So Survive and Thrive is about supporting cancer survivors during their journey, but also helping them with the copayment, so it's not a financial impact, and they have to worry about treatment and not getting treatment.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so you said, she was at the first Survive and Thrive. So
Yes.
does that mean that you have, like, full event days or weekends or something for people to get together? Talk a little bit more about what those are.
Yeah. So what we do is every October, we do it, host it in October. It's usually the third week. So it was the 25th of October, this past October. And we do an event where it's a full day. It was 2 days, but we do a full day of where we have speakers, we have, of course, food, and we have things and opportunity for folks to get up and share their story. We have different people that come in and talk about mindset, health, wealth, recovery. So we're talking about all these areas for the cancer survivors to help them, and then to give them an opportunity to share their journey. And they, can get some pampering. We'll have people there for massages. And so this next year, I'm really looking at massages and makeup, things just so people can feel good that day. So we do this every year. One particular year, the goal was before COVID, we were taking it on the road. So we actually hosted it in Houston. And so that was really good to do that. And then by the time, COVID kicked in, it kind of stomped our plans to move to Baltimore and then Florida. So that was still just the goal.
Wow. And are you still, so you are still doing them because you just did it back in October?
Yes. So we do them. We're still doing them. Even during COVID, we just did it on Zoom. We did via Zoom for 3 years. And so that's what we would do. And then now that we're back, everyone's kind of coming back together. We are back doing them in person.
I love that. All right. And is that also kind of a fundraising opportunity for your organization as well? Or is it strictly for, pampering and education and support for the survivors?
Yes, it's definitely our big fundraising opportunity where we would have opportunities for people to fundraise, people to become donors, folks to be able to be on the board, volunteer. So we have all of these different opportunities for people to be a part of Survive and Thrive. And we do, drawings, we have items, people will donate things so that people can buy raffle tickets, and to be able to do that. But we use that as an opportunity to bring people aware, them understanding that co-payments can definitely debilitate and, can cause people to go into bankruptcy, just cancer in itself. So we use that as a really great opportunity so people can see, but they also can fundraise and donate to the cause.
Oh, I love that. We need so many more organizations like that out there for people because cancer is expensive.
It is. It really is. I mean, even just caring for yourself. So it's not even just the treatment in itself, but it's just caring for yourself from a personal level, which is very, very difficult and it costs. And if you still want to look like you're still a part of the society, the wigs or the makeup or the things that you have to do, they cost. There's a cost associated with that. And so that's one of the last things you're thinking about, but it's more the internal thing that does keep you going.
Mhm.
So it's very important.
Yeah. You're just trying to, save your life and you don't want
Right.
to have to worry about, am I going to feed myself or am I going to get this
Mhm.
chemo treatment?
Right. Very true.
Oh, well, I absolutely love that. And, I wanted to ask you about this because it was something that you shared before we started. I know you wanted to talk about people when they're diagnosed and the ability to share and stuff. So I want you to kind of put it in your own words what we had talked about before that you wanted to make sure that you were able to share about that.
Yeah, it's really a thing from the point of when you're first diagnosed, there's a lot going on. You're being told that you have a disease that will kill you. And the treatment alone too can kill you. So it's like all
Or
these
make you
different
want to
things.
be dead.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, which one am I doing, chicken or the egg? As far as things go. But it's just really more so a thing of looking at your diagnoses should not have to be something that you are embarrassed of. I know when I would share, people would not want to tell anyone. They would want to tell me, but they wouldn't want anyone else to really know about it. So my point is that we should not be ashamed of being diagnosed or having cancer or battling, being able to share with folks. So I look at it from the point of, sharing with people the campaign of there's no shame in my diagnosis. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't be afraid to tell. Let people know, because I mean, yes, it is your journey, but as your supports and people that's around, they do want to have an opportunity to support you. So it's like sharing that is definitely a good thing to do, and don't be ashamed of it.
And so, and I know the answer to this, but why do you think that people don't want to share? Where do you feel that the, kind of the shame comes from? Because I'm a big proponent of every time you share your story, you becoming an advocate for somebody
Right.
else to get checked or get their mammogram
Yes.
or, go see the doctor or something like that. So, from your social work experience, where do you think that shame really comes from?
Well, from what I find is that there was one young lady who reached out to me, and she was a nurse, and she had was diagnosed with cancer, and she was ashamed because I was like, oh, I'm like, you're a nurse, so this is great. You got good information you can share. Come on with me. And she didn't want to share because she felt that by her being a nurse, that it was shameful for a nurse to get cancer. You should know better concept. You should know that your body is doing this to have cancer. And what I find is that people feel that they are less acknowledged, that they are to the point where people are not really more so looking at them, or they don't feel that they are worthy of doing anything or working or being able to work or credible. So I find that when they don't want to share because they don't want to have pity, they don't want people to count them out. I do remember times, even doing the work that I did when I was working with people, they were like, well, no, I didn't want to bother you because, I didn't know if you were going to be sick or if you were going to be ill. So they would discount the fact that of what my job and skill set was because I was battling cancer. So it was more so pity, but it was also like, okay, they felt that I could not do it. I couldn't do it. It was sort of more so a smudge to my abilities. And, of course, I'm already like, okay, I'm going through cancer. I done lost my hair, all my eyebrows, and I done lost this. Now I'm losing my capacity to be able to show that I am able to do things. And that's not great. It's not a good feeling, and especially if you're like, we know that there are famous folks, stars and athletes, and they feel that they are not being seen, that is their livelihood. They can't have treatment if they have no money. If they can't go and do their work, they can't do the job that they need to do, so thus they don't have coverage or treatment ability. So it taps into an area for them that is their livelihood. So it's your livelihood that it will, encroach upon. So no one wants to share that because they don't want to be discounted or counted out or not included. So you already feel isolated because you're going through cancer. Now you feel even more isolated because now people are pushing you off to the side.
Even though, people still have that, when you hear those three words, the first thing is, am I going to die? And
Yes.
then the second thing is, am I going to lose my hair? But cancer is not the death sentence that it once was. And, survival rates and thriving rates have gone through the roof compared to 20 years ago. And I wish more celebrities and those kind of people could understand that if they share their story, they can help other
Yes.
people
Very
with that,
impactful.
instead of being shamed. And yeah, and people share after the fact. Like, I live in Colorado, and, Deion Sanders is
Hmm.
the head coach
Yes.
of our, Colorado Buffaloes. And I mean,
Yes.
he said afterwards, that he went
Yeah.
through bladder cancer and all of those things. And, I think he might have been able to help more people if he had shared it, when he was going through it.
Yeah. But the unfortunate part is because life is what it is, and people feel the way they do is when you share people, if you are definitely being invested where you are an athlete or you are a high paid person. If I'm going to give you millions of dollars and you're not going to be able to perform, that's a loss for me.
True.
So this is business, and that's the business side. And if I'm in that light and I share with the public that this is what I'm going through, they're like, "Oh, you're bad goods. We can't touch you because that's going to cost us." So they don't want that. No one wants that.
Right. So everybody listening out there, stop it. If you think that about people, just stop it. People still have so much to give, even if they are going through, an experience that is mostly curable, and we're all going to get back to some sort of normal life afterwards. All right. So Shannon, where can people find you if they want to find out more about your t-shirt business, about Survive and Thrive, like just want to connect with you to find out more about you? What's the best way for people to find you?
The great thing is For Humanities, we are on Facebook and Instagram and some of all those other little fancy TikToks and stuff. And it's like number 4 Humanities with 2 E's. So number 4, HUMANITEES for teas. And for Survive and Thrive, we are also, we have a website. It's www.surviveandthrivecr.org. And we too are on Facebook and Instagram. And, you can find us there and on both of those platforms or all of those platforms. And then me, LinkedIn, Facebook, I'm on all of those also. Still under Shannon Griffin.
Okay. And we'll put all of those in the show notes so people can find. And if they want to find out more about Survive and Thrive or donate to your organization, we'll have the website and stuff for them to be able to do that. All right, Shannon, so I asked this of all of my guests at the end, and it's this. So if you were to come across somebody who has just been diagnosed with cancer, or they're in the midst of overwhelm about a new diagnosis, what is one piece of advice that you would give to them to kind of help them navigate these early stages of cancer and their diagnosis?
It would be prepare. I did put something together. It was called the preparation. And it was about how to prepare yourself, how to prepare your environment. Like even to the degree I prepared my house. I painted a wall in my room because I was going to be in there for the next 6 months. So I painted it a color that I wanted to look at for 6 months. I prepared family. I prepared areas. I did work that I knew I wasn't being able to do after, my surgery and treatment. And so I prepared, and I knew these were going to be the things that I was going to look at, deal with. I put flowers up by the front door, silk flowers that are still sitting there. They were yellow. And I was like, okay, I want to see these colors when I come in after treatment. I want to see the room, the color. So it was about prepare. Don't run. Don't be scared. And if you are, find someone that can ground you. And be prepared, because we know that when we are prepared, we feel a little bit more comfortable. We'll feel more confident, and we know to some degree how we would react or what we will be doing and how we can prepare for that. It's just like anything. You going on a trip, get prepared.
I love that. That's perfect. I don't think I've had anybody say that one before. So that's a new one, and I love it. Because we don't think about it. We're in the midst of, this tunnel vision of, oh my gosh, I have to just get rid of the cancer, that we don't necessarily think about all of the other things that we're not going to be able to do, during treatment and stuff. So I love that.
Yes, it really helped. It really helped. And I was able to kind of give it out to people who were also going through something. So again, even during the time I'm sitting here going through treatment, I was like, okay, let me put this thing together for people.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shannon. This was such a wonderful conversation, and I know that it's going to help so many. So I really appreciate you sitting down with me for this conversation today.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.